You know, every now and then we see some really cool retro gaming finds pop up on the internet. We saw the Super Nintendo PlayStation pop up that was a very cool prototype of what could have been between the Nintendo and PlayStation brands. We also saw the Americanized Nintendo 64 disk drive unit pop up from Metal Jesus Rocks, which was really cool to see because we didn't even think, well, it existed until then. And now, over in a thrift shop in California, we see an Atari 2700 prototype pop up. And you might be asking yourself, what's an Atari 2700? I've heard of the 2600, even the 5200, or the 7800, but what's a 2700 and why didn't it come out? Well, that's pretty straightforward. See, the 2700 was essentially a 2600 to the degree that it played the same games. It looks different, yes, but the big thing to take away here is that it was going to be using straight wireless controllers, which was a big deal considering it was set to release in 1981. You can even see how massive the antennas were on top of the controllers. Now, of course, the 2600 did have wireless controllers that were insane looking nowadays, as you see with the massive antennas. But the whole thing about the 2700 is apparently these remotes were going to have range up to 1,000 feet, which is insane. But the real problem and the reason it was canceled is because there was no way at that time to pair controllers to a certain system. You know how nowadays you can take your controller, you hit a sync button on that, hit a sync button on your system, and then they'll match up and you're off? Well, back then, that wasn't the case. In fact, those remotes would affect other Atari 2700s that were in the vicinity. I mean, we're talking 1,000 feet. So if you're in like an apartment complex, for example, and you're close enough to your neighbors to where your Atari 2700 could affect their Atari 2700 with the remotes, which is kind of funny, but that was the big reason they couldn't release it to market because it just wouldn't work. However, like any system, they did prototype and test this before they determined that it wasn't ready for market. And apparently these prototypes started to kind of leak out into the world. And in this case, it was donated to a thrift shop in California. Someone from Reddit picked it up. And there you go. They now have it. Now, this Reddit user by the name of Logan, spelled with numbers, so L064N, decided to buy it for $30, like most of us would after figuring out, wow, this is a 2700, which is super rare. No controllers came with it, but it was still a base unit that showed to be powering on, which is cool. Good enough usually for collectors in that case. Managed to then take it and sell it on eBay for $3,000. So it was a pretty good pickup on their end because obviously they made quite a bit of money there. And at that point, maybe somebody who would collect it and enjoy it does now have it. And yes, it probably is worth that much. Might even be worth more, considering there's maybe a dozen of these things out there that could even exist. The possibility of it existing, about a dozen, which means through things like it actually degrading, people just throwing it out because it happens all the time, especially if this was in like an office that was liquidated and they just took all the stuff and maybe threw out what they consider junk at the time that could be historical now. I'm honestly surprised it only sold for $3,000, as crazy as that sounds. But really, it just goes to show you never know what you can find at a thrift shop, at a flea market, at a swap meet, anything. That's why I always tell people, even though it seems like it's dried up to where, well, I don't think I'm going to find anything cool. Honestly, you never know. I doubt this person thought they were going to walk into a thrift shop over in Oceanside, California and find an Atari 2700. I would never expect that, and that's why I still go to places like Goodwill's, despite them selling a lot of their stuff online. If an Atari 2700 came through, I guarantee they'd probably just put it on the shelf thinking it's some old appliance. But always check out any of these places, guys. You never know what you're going to find. That's it for now. I'll see you guys next time.